Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to wait just about another minute for more people to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. So hi, everyone. My name is Sesame, and I'm the Growth Marketing Director here at Intellimize. We're really happy to have all of you here with us today for our webinar, Web Conversion Tactics That Work Right Now. So please feel free to join in the conversation with our panelists this morning by entering your questions in directly into the chat field on your screen. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to Matt to get us started. Matt.
Thank you so much, Sesame. Thank you for Intellimize for putting together this amazing panel. And we've got a ton of research. We've got a ton of insights. We have a packed hour that is going to include some of your questions as well. So excited to have you all here. If you are not familiar with the Livestorm tool, feel free to sit back and just enjoy and take notes. You can also engage with us directly. There's a chat feature that should be on your right, as well as a place where you can put in questions that you have for the panel. I have a bunch. We have a bunch of content there ready to sort of talk through some best practices for you. But we want to make sure this is valuable for each of you watching as well. So please feel free to engage with the panelists and ask questions as we go along as well. I want to give our panel a quick opportunity to introduce themselves briefly before we get going. We'll start with Guy. Go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. My name's Guy Yalif. I'm co-founder and CEO of Intellimize and have been thinking about digital experiences and optimizing them for the last 15 years. We, for the performance-oriented, results-driven marketer, automatically optimize websites, personalizing them for each unique visitor in the moment.
Love it. I love the concise intro as well. That's good. Sam, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. I'm Sam Molmud. I'm the Director of Web Strategy and Operations at Sumo. The team that I work with, we're responsible for the web operations of Sumo Logic, so the management, the design, and the maintenance of the website, organic search acquisition, so all of the SEO strategy, and conversion rate optimization.
And last but not least, Ben.
Hey, everyone, the research director at CXL Agency. So it's my directive to stand up research programs that serve as the foundation for optimization, A/B testing programs for clients all around the world. So we're running a team of analysts that are executing on a lot of optimization, and we'll see some examples of that today.
We will. So I think, as we get started, I mean, obviously a lot has changed over the last few months. Things will continue to change, not just what's happening externally in the world, but also people's behavior online. And, Guy, talk a little bit about this before you get into some of the research that we've got here as well. What are some of the macro points that people need to be aware of as we adjust how we're working and how we're even working online?
Yeah, I'm seeing from my side, as we're getting into sort of the stage 2, stage 3, situation here, we're starting to see shakeouts of different industries, and I think we'll see, Guy, you've got some really good data on that. And in our experience, we're starting to see massive changes in intent, and accounting for that is the big challenge today that we're having to face. And so if it's a tool or a SaaS company, that's one, on the tech side, that's one thing, but if it's retail, restaurant point of sale systems, all the activities, the priorities are just drastically different. And so the challenge on our side is just a split brain on adapting here.
Sam, what are you seeing?
So, as being digital marketers and especially in web strategy, let's be real, change is a constant. It's the varying degrees of how intense those changes are that vary from time to time. And it's very obvious that right now, with everything going on in the world, that everything is changing at a massive degree higher than it usually is. But when we think about the word reacting, I think that sometimes maybe even has a negative connotation, especially in marketing and sales. We're phonetically and I think psychologically programmed and encouraged to be proactive about our strategies. But digital marketing and web strategy are really actually about listening to the data and helping to minimize the impediments that users are encountering from accomplishing those success metrics you're measuring as a marketer. And so in my opinion, it's being able to listen to the data and study what users are doing, modifying your approach and formulating something better. It's not the big negative reacting that we're encouraged to stay away from, but rather it's actually iterating on the user experience and paying attention to what your users are looking for. And I strongly believe that that's actually more impactful than ever right now because of the great degree of change that we're experiencing.
So speaking of changing user experiences, we've got 3 sections we're going to walk through here before we get to some of your direct questions. Guy is going to walk us through some research that is showing what's happening specifically within sort of conversion rate optimization, click rates over the last couple of months, where they're going to walk through specific changes that companies are making on their websites. We're going to do a live takedown of a couple sites and talk about some conversion rate changes, opportunities there, and then we'll be able to get to your questions as well. And Guy, let's start with some of the research that we found. I think there's good news and bad news and opportunities throughout this, but walk us through it a little bit.
So thanks, Matt. Building on what Sam and Ben said, we are a bunch. In fact, as we looked across all of our customers, we're all online a lot more. Traffic is up and increasing rapidly post-COVID. For the next few slides, we're going to compare the first half of March to everything after, because most of the lockdowns happened in mid-March. And we saw traffic was up 18% just in the first 2 weeks of lockdown. And it's more than doubled if you look at the second half of May. That is a massive change in a short amount of time. And as so often happens when traffic goes up, you get less qualified traffic and conversion rates go down. And so conversion rates in the second half of March across all of our customers, across industries, were 11% lower than the first half of March. And now conversion rates are down on average by a third. Now that sounds dire, but when you compare that to the more than doubling of traffic in the second half of May on the previous slide, the net is up, right? The traffic has more than offset the reduction in conversion rates. But if you go one level deeper, the effect is anything but uniform. When we look at conversion rates, how they changed pre and post-COVID by industry, we see B2C SaaS was up a lot and now is down some, actually a fair bit. That category in this categorization is heavily weighted with stay-at-home B2C offerings like education or personal video conferencing. B2B was also up and is weathering among the best across the different verticals. Our hypothesis was that B2B buyers had a lot more free time early on, and that some of that is drying up. E-commerce was down early, which surprised us, but it's holding strong like B2B, and that feels a lot more intuitive. And underneath this, we found another trend hidden in this data. Digital native businesses, ones that are only online, their conversion rates went up even as traffic went up, topping out at 26%, currently up 4%. And brick and mortar tied businesses, on the other hand, saw their conversion rates drop quite significantly as traffic went up. So what about the points we were talking about a little earlier? Turns out we're seeing the change in behavior reflected in our websites a lot. So remember I shared that overall conversion rates were down? That's the yellow line you see in the middle. What we're seeing is that existing messaging and base websites that we all have in place are underperforming that substantially. That's the light green line at the bottom. Static websites are in general out of date as soon as your marketing efforts change or competitors change their marketing efforts. But this is especially true now as your prospects change their behavior so dramatically during COVID, as Ben was saying. When we look at those same websites in the portion of traffic that's dynamically personalizing, adjusting to changes in visitor behavior, the dip is between 23 and 78% better. So just as we spoke about earlier, we're seeing our customers' prospects' behavior changing rapidly, and that changing behaviors making a lot of our messaging and experiences and content not nearly as effective as it was just a couple of months ago. And the signal we take from this is that we as marketers should adjust our digital engagement with prospects to mirror their rapidly changing behavior.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about this as a group before we get into some of the specific conversion rate changes that are happening on websites. And Yalif here in the chat kind of confirmed some of the data that you mentioned, Guy, that he's seen double the traffic, half the conversion. And I wonder then if you were to apply some of what you're talking about in terms of having more dynamic, personalized experiences on the website, can you then bridge the further gap and say, listen, even though even conversion rates are down, can you now sort of mitigate that and reverse that trend? Sam, I want to have you sort of talk about sort of what this means and what companies need to be doing about it.
Yeah, and it's when you talk about the concept of having a static website, I always think about the classic or the old school kind of brochure websites that don't change, and they're kind of, it is what you see. They don't change for maybe a year or two, and content updates, aside from maybe blogs or more updating or fluid sections of the website, they basically stay the same. It's kind of that one size fits all approach. And I think it's fair to say, even before things have dramatically changed recently, static was never really a good thing anyway. It was never really catering to the many different users that are coming through. And whether it's B2B or B2C, I think most organizations now have different users of different segments of different backgrounds that are either looking for different things or resonate with different messages. That's why we have positioning strategies for these different personas. And so especially now with change being more fluid and people turning digital and actually spending more time engaging online, users, especially now more than ever, are more fatigued, I believe, and immediately turned off from seeing the same things when they return to these websites. And so I would strongly argue that when it comes to CRO, A/B testing, at the minimum scale, but personalization at the upper end of it, not only is CRO an opportunity to test and find out what's successful and improve and pull those different levers on your web journey, it fundamentally is a user experience upgrade actually to your web journey dynamic, because you're at the root of everything just serving up different messages to your users and being able to provide them a more fluid, changing experience that is naturally more engaging for those different segments coming through.
Yeah, I'd jump in on that, Sam. That's great. And I want to add a bit of a perspective for context. And what you just kind of walked us through in terms of the advantages of dynamic versus static. And to your point in the beginning where you mentioned that the degree of changes, right? Everything's always changing, but the degree of changing is really is the new world right now. Thinking about dynamic websites in terms of not a tactic, but a strategy, traditional A/B testing is testing elements, maybe layout. As things really change, as user intents are changing quite dramatically, dynamic websites, the ability to serve these completely different experiences allows us to back up and do broader strategy testing, because your 3-year vision for a company could be blown out the water. And you need to not only do these element testing, layout testing, you got to back up as a company and think about, okay, where is my new segment? Where's my new channel? Where's my new market? How has that changed? How has user intent changed? And so I would just add on top of what you said, Sam, where static is not the way to go. You have to understand how that corresponds to the strategy of the company as well, right? So the A/B testing, the elements being served, the personalization has to also fit in within the business strategy and where that is being pointed to or being kind of misdirected during these changing times.
At least for me, Ben, that resonates very strongly. We have sometimes folks say, hey, I can go test a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to test a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And it's not connected to hypotheses about their prospects and what will convert them into customers, or connected to the ultimate business objective they want. What you're saying resonates a lot for me.
Yeah, that's the slide that Matt just transitioned to. Sorry, Matt, I hope it's okay for me to jump in. The learning versus optimizing, considering this highly variable environment, that's really what we're getting at. And at least for me, I like to use the learning versus optimizing is draw a wedge in there and having, when I want to learn, it all assumes a specific strategy, a specific hypothesis. And a hypothesis is nothing more than a strategy and vice versa, right? And there's trade-offs there. So if you're just testing anything, throwing anything that sticks out there, you're not assuming a hypothesis. And that's where a lot of marketers get stuck. That's where a lot of a lot of CMOs come to me and focus on conversion rate or AOV, kind of a metric focus, right? Not a hypothesis, not a question focus that's tied back to the business strategy. And that's where I like to draw that line for the testing versus optimizing.
Well, it's funny you say that, Ben, too, because I think across digital marketing and web strategy in general, we have these phenomenons where we want to increase or impact something, but we also want to do it precisely and with strong impact. You look at SEO, for example, and just driving sheer amount of traffic sometimes doesn't necessitate leads or success for a business at the end of the day, especially if you're just writing, very particular keyword specific content that's not really ideal to the user. You can drive a lot of content, but not have any results. And I think that's similar with CRO too. You can personalize and have a very fluid website. But unless you're understanding the different paths and objectives that users have going to your website, and understanding that there's different teams within your marketing department that have different objectives. Some of your user paths or the sections of those paths are better suited for education, brand awareness, and others are more bottom of the funnel. They're more lead generation specific. And so understanding how you would optimize those different pieces of the journey and that kind of how you would fix that little bolt of that is really important to, I think, a holistic CRO strategy that does include learning versus optimization. And I think, case in point, you optimize a solution page or even your homepage to drive more engagement or clicks on that front end. But if you're not thinking about where you're actually sending the person to and how they could potentially not be converting there, you might be missing out on opportunity of that full scale optimization strategy. And I'd say that in digital, we're always running the risk potentially of playing whack-a-mole, where we solve one problem but not paying attention to the rest of the funnel. And it's important as digital marketers that we're always thinking about the holistic view as we optimize and all the different aspects that these tests potentially have an influence on.
So you both triggered something for me. While I totally agree, you playing whack-a-mole and just getting people one step further isn't enough. You need to focus on every step of the journey to get them from beginning to end. The notion that testing and optimization need to be two separate things, I see that often, and I see separate strategies around it. And respectfully, I disagree. I don't see it the same way. I think you should be testing and making more money at the same time. It doesn't have to be an either or. We see customers doing this all the time, where they're optimizing for each unique visitor, making more money, and simultaneously finding learnings like A/B testing style global winners that they can use either as credibility around the org to say, hey, look, I brought this insight, or in their other marketing channels, like to improve, their targeted emails or ads or direct mail. And so I actually don't think it needs to be an either or. I think you can and should do both at the same time.
Yeah, ultimately, I agree. I like to make the distinction to highlight the data trap that you can fall into if you don't understand that you need to be learning at the same time. Because data traps are, again and again, agencies get hired, tools are used in order to drive focus, decision support, right? If we don't have a direction we're going in, if we don't have the orientation of, okay, we're A, we want to get to B, then ultimately you could just go anywhere, right? Any road will take you there. And so it's the learning and it's the data traps we want to avoid. That's where those off ramps we get stuck and we don't get to that B. Yeah.
Well, I think we've all seen conversion rate increases that lead to long-term decreases in qualification and quality, right? I mean, you can increase your open rates and click rates on an email artificially with some kind of a bait and switch tactic that isn't necessarily going to help people sort of get through the entire buying journey. So, the means does not necessarily justify the ends. And sometimes we'll tell people, hey, listen, like you can get a better click rate on your website, but I can't buy a beer with a better to be able a customer to the end of the buying journey so that they benefit and we benefit as well. All right, well, let's get into the meat here. We've got a number of ideas pulled from specific websites that many of the people on our panel have been working on. Please continue to throw content into the chat. I started the question here based on that last discussion of testing versus learning, tactics and channels versus the whole buying journey. Would love to hear what other people are doing, and we've already got some questions coming in. Ellie, has a great question here around sort of website up versus chat that I want to get to as well. But let's dig into some specific website changes and ideas that can help land this. It's one thing to talk about the stats and talk about trends. Let's show some specific examples. And Sam, start off with you.
Yeah, and I mean, really speaking to that there's no one size fitting all to users' interests or even their journeys on the website. I think that a lot of times when we think about digital advertising as an example, and you're running advertising out on whether it's display or text ads, you have a correlation between the message or even the design that somebody sees and the landing page that you're sending them to. Well, arguably, the organic and direct acquisition paths on a website, and some of the strongest ones being your homepage, are in fact a landing page too. And I think that treating most of these touch points on your website, especially the biggest entrances like a homepage, and treating that like a landing page, philosophically actually changes the way that you actually tackle that. And again, moving away from that kind of static one-size-fits-all approach and not changing things, but rather realizing that you have multiple users, potentially of different personas and different segments, and honestly of different solution interests coming into your website. If there's a way that you can correlate that better to their entrance, then much like when you run a digital advertisement and you send somebody to a lead generation page, if you have that correlation really well fine-tuned between those two, you can minimize your bounce rates and also get more on-page conversions to occur. And so this example here is more of a profound example of different promotions or different hero messaging that can occur when somebody comes in to the website. But by fine-tuning these, not only do we get to also learn what messages resonate better, not by just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, these are definitely things that resonate across the segments that come in through the website, but really being able to play around and collect data on what resonates the best, while also serving something that somebody might be coming through organic search and having searched for and getting served up this particular message or even call to action, depending on what their interests are, really closes that alignment between how they click or see or experience potentially Sumo logic before they enter the website, and then what they actually see when they actually get on there. And at that point, we're testing these to find what resonates best, but also not serving up a static experience. And it's really giving us an opportunity to learn and actually improve the metrics that matter most to us for engaging users as they enter the website.
I know we have a few examples to go through, but Sam, I just want to say that insight of, hey, a lot of traffic's going to our homepage and we treat everyone the same. And instead, why don't we meet them where they are in their journey with us based on what we know, has been a key insight for so many of our customers and has driven so much return. Like, hat tip, couldn't agree with you more.
Well, and it's also, it's a big opportunity in itself. I mean, just optimizing a homepage is not, a one-off project. It's one of those always on campaigns, in my opinion, that, much like you have brand awareness campaigns that are always on at a company, or you're always running these different, digital advertisement campaigns. Optimizing your homepages should be something that is always going on. In fact, it can be such a big thing that it requires a roadmap for different integrations and how you phase in other concepts to it. And it goes beyond just testing messaging and creative and buttons, but ultimately it does, once you build those building blocks, you can go into personalization, you can go into more complex things to integrate with ABM and the rest of your tech stack and really have some more fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, you kind of went down funnel there, Sam. And this next example here from Code Academy is mine. Same idea, same spirit, just customizing. Here we're a little bit more tactical, surgical to goal personalization. Like what's the intent of that user? We've got some elements right in this monetization flow on this checkout screen where we want to personalize it based on user interactions and inputs higher up in the funnel. So again, kind of a goal-based persona framework for personalization. So this is a bit of a tactical example down funnel on the harder problem that you kind of did a great job, Sam, at talking about.
Guy, I think these next couple examples are yours.
Happy to go through them. We have a customer, Drift, Eliav. We work with them, they work with us, who, among other things, experimented with welcoming back returning visitors. This builds on what Sam said about treating your homepage as a landing page. Like, how many of us are guilty of just not acknowledging that a prospect has been here before? Or just as bad, if not worse, that's actually a customer showing up and you treat them like a prospect. Simply remembering those details and creating a different experience for those visitors has an outsized impact on your prospect's behavior. And you can take this sort of visit memory further. And for example, in a B2B context, treat someone who's visited your site 4 or 5 times and is clearly interested put a more aggressive message in front of them. Talk to sales, or to what Eliav's question was, put a more aggressive chatbot in front of them to push them to communicate with your sales team. That's one example. Another example, another customer, Bonusly, experimented with the placement of their nav bar. They actually found it more impactful to have it separate from the nav links to visually call attention to the calls to action in the upper right. This helped them drive more try for free and sign in actions and made those links pop more. We've had other customers. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Guy. I like that one. That we do a lot of that work on separating what I call content menu items from transactional menu items, right? Different types of intent, right? So this is the, yeah.
100%, Ben. Resonates a bunch. And other things folks try are showing or hiding elements based on the predicted value of the customer. The most extreme we saw was somebody who said, hey, this is a high value prospect. I'm literally going to remove the pricing link from the nav bar because I want to make them call sales. Risky thing to do. For them, it ended up working out. Or we had other customers take, like they had menu bar that dropped down, had a ton of text links. They swapped them out actually for images. In their case, this was categories of products. And when they made it more visual and curated the list, drove a bunch more engagement through the site that they wanted. Another example on the next slide, Dermalogic's Clear Start brand decided to use real life social proof on their site, eschewing the traditional sort of perfectly beautiful models that so many websites use. We suggest curating this so you don't get spammed, but once you do, showing real life people using your product can be really powerful, believable proof that your product can work for people just like your visitors. Can humanize your brand, make you more relatable. ClearStart also tried, of note, changing the hero images. You see this hero as of the product. They tried what others have done as well, trying to put people right in the hero itself. And frankly, we've seen both work. It's not clear to us that there's a rule of thumb that product-led imagery or customer-led imagery works better, and suggest trying them both.
Guy, before we move on and get to some of Ben's examples, there was a question in the chat about how you do personalization when you've got a work from home customer. Like, does this change now that we're no longer seeing corporate domains and IPs as much, and we're now seeing people working from, you know, something that's probably a shared IP that's more difficult to identify?
It's a great question. I take that in a B2B context rather than a B2C context. And in the B2B context, I know the reverse IP lookup vendors out there are working really hard to re-improve their coverage rate. And there's at least one that I know of that uses an email plugin to help them get some of their data. So that helps them improve that a bunch. Okay, that's the heart of the question. But there are other proxies you can use. You can look at where somebody went on your website. Did they go to an SMB case study? Did they go to an enterprise case study? You can use that to infer. Did they go to a case study from a particular industry? Did they go to a particular product in your product suite? Did they go to here's solutions for, you know, the CEO, the CMO, the CFO, the different roles? You can use all of those signals, not on first touch, in fairness, but when they go back to your homepage, when they go back to another part of your site, you can use those to further tailor the experience. Last thought on that is, if they arrived on your site from a targeted ad or email, you might already actually know what you want to know about them. Maybe not the specific company name, but if you refine the targeting on your ads and emails, they are targeting all industries, fine. Now I'm going to create 5 campaigns targeting all 5 industries that I care about, so I can get that additional information inbound and use that to tailor my site.
I wanted to add in a data point here that we've done a lot of rigorous testing on these data enrichment platforms, and excuse me, we've seen some of the success. The quality metrics go from about 40% accuracy to about 20% accuracy as people moved home. That was about a month and a half ago or so. So right at the peak of it, and as you mentioned, Guy, that might be working to get a little bit better on there. But we saw a pretty drastic reduction in accuracy on that. Here's an example of mine, another one from Code Academy. This one highlighting value and benefits, and very much at the heart of the transaction. We're seeing we're measuring a lot of effects at how we're displaying Again, not only benefits, but in this case, what this is visualizing, the monetary benefits or the savings that people will get. So how that's being presented, where that's being presented. This is one example. We're working a lot and throwing out a lot of variations on this right now and seeing a lot of movement, more than we normally would have. And part of that has to do with the acquisition models are changing, right? You mentioned, Guy, in the beginning that traffic is doubling. What that means is that your mix of intent has totally changed, right? So for Code Academy, for example, they get all of a sudden there's 90 million kids working from home in the world, right? And so how the cost savings, a monthly versus annual, all those things, just again, the strategy of what you think would work totally changed, and so now we're finding a lot of benefits at testing value and cost saving type of elements on checkout. This is another one, kind of speaks to along the same lines of treating your homepage like a landing page and eventually creating landing pages for these different types of channels. This is work done with Grubhub, testing across user intents and testing and creating these experiences for different types of user intent. So if I'm looking for a delivery, a food delivery solution, I might search restaurant delivery near me. I might be more specific, value-oriented. Restaurant delivery deals near me. I want to save money, or I might want something very specific, hamburger delivery near me, right? So based on those different intents that you gather, and how they come to your site, you can very, very different experiences. The messaging, the words, the CTAs can be quite different. So
I really like this idea here. To me, it works also across B2B as well. Yeah. Because when you think about traditional A/B testing and just showing a new variant of something across the entire spectrum, you might get to a certain point where, okay, maybe your analytics show that it had a neutral impact. You had the same amount of resulting conversions coming through at the end of the day, and that could be a good thing or a neutral thing. But when you test across different segments of people coming through, that's where things can get interesting, because sometimes in that area you might notice a particular lift by actually understanding what a particular segment who did, kind of tying off of what Guy said earlier, being able to personalize based on that. You can actually get better lift by narrowing the faucet, so to say, a little bit more, getting more specific to that segment, understanding what their intent is, and being able to play around within that segment and just testing within there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. This is another really good one. This will probably be pretty logical. We work with a lot of direct-to-consumer products. This one, mattresses. We work with firm Serta Simmons, and this is, of course, Tufton Needle. Back in 2019, buying a mattress it's a long consideration time purchase. People want to try it. They're, generally user intent falls into 4 buckets. I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, I want to buy. With mattresses, you have 3 of them. You don't have I want to do necessarily, but you have like I want to go and try this, right? Well, that changed in 2020, right? So you don't have that type of user intent anymore. And so you see that element, that big bar in 2019, also available at Walmart and Lowe's. That's not so important. User intent is different. We need to adjust for that. Now, when people come, I want to know about the mattresses, or I want to buy the mattress. These are the dominant user intents that you need to, address. So you can see some differences there. And this one, a lot of times in this conversation thus far, we've talked about using behavioral data to help you personalize as you go down funnel, to help you engage as you go down funnel. We're seeing a lot of gains across B2B, e-commerce, you name it, in allowing what I call the input of zero-party data to get these micro conversions, these head nods by people, to allow them to give us data that to allow them to describe themselves, right? That top example, that top screenshot is from Noom. Why are you there today? To get fit or to lose weight? That's kind of a fork in the road with their product, right? Why are you using Loom there? Is it education, personal, work related? That will help not only get that head nod and increase the chance to get a head nod further in the monetization flow, but it also is great information for the marketing team to have. If you click on that, and then you can retarget based on those goals, you can retarget based on the user inputted intent data that you have. Even if you don't have their email, you can sort of use that data almost in a research sense to understand the shifts in intent across channels, across devices, and how that's changing. These are becoming really, really powerful. And again, B2B, B2C, B2C2B, all models this applies to.
Guy, this is back to you.
So our next example, we'll talk about stoking competitive juices. But Philip, you asked a great question. Hey, what do you think about asking the totally anonymous visitor about them to personalize for them? We've seen customers try both, typically with some nice success, but sometimes customers didn't care, right? In two-sided marketplaces, are you a buyer or a seller? Mm-hmm. Or, where they're totally different roles or totally different industries you're selling to. And we've encouraged our customers to make that visible, but then once the customer doesn't engage, get that question out of the way. When they come back, asking them over and over and over again to do that resonated less, because when they didn't do it the first or second time, they weren't going to do it again. We also had some customers where that would appear after a little while, or you'd have them be on the homepage for a little bit, and then you'd ask them, hey, do you want to personalize this further? So I think it's a great question, Philip, and it leads into other ways you might personalize, where here, back to our earlier discussion in B2B particularly, if you can detect where someone's from, you can stoke their competitive juices. Here's an example, totally mocked up, made up, picked Amplitude's website. This could be anyone's. If a visitor showed up on Amplitude's website, when I took this screenshot, this is what they would have seen. Now imagine I work for JetBlue and I go to the same website. Imagine if I could see what's on the next slide. Wouldn't it be great if 3 of the logos were my competitors, Southwest, Alaska, and United in this hypothetical example? That would help me justify buying Amplify to my boss by saying, hey, look, our competitors are using it. It would also get my competitive juices flowing and give me social proof that the peers I care about are using Amplitude. Now, this is a mock-up, not Amplitude's real site. I have no idea if these companies are Amplitude customers. And to do this in practice, you'd use one of these reverse IP lookup vendors. And once you know the company, you'll then use them or another vendor to enrich the company information to know what industry they're in. And in advance, you'll map your customer logos to each industry, so you show some of them in the logo farm. Now, I would suggest not making all the logos into competitors, because that'll seem creepy, but a few feels like serendipity. Now, once you know what company I'm with and what industry I'm in, to Matt's point of going to the next slide, there's more you can do to personalize the B2B website experience. You can tailor the case studies you show to make them feel more relevant to the visitor, even if we don't have a case study exactly in their industry. Here's an example from Mixpanel that I screenshotted a while back. These are actual pages on their site. They already have these case studies. They've done the work. Now imagine you could show the right one to each visitor. Would that help drive more prospects further down your funnel?
All right. So we've got about 20 minutes left. We are going to put our panelists on the spot. This is the hot seat. We asked some of you beforehand if you would be willing to let us review your site on the fly in front of all of your peers, and a couple of you were brave enough to give us that. So I'm going to give this a shot here. We've got Samsara that I'm going to pull up, and hopefully this works. Here is Samsara's homepage. Panelist, David's grabbing his popcorn. Let's see what you guys got.
Yeah, I like a lot of what's going on here with Samsara. The one thing is I would want to know is how are people coming in, in what mindset they're coming in. You start out with a very what am I? Like, I'm in the right place. That's a very common thing to do, real-time fleet dash cams. If that's what I'm looking for, that's good to know, right? Okay, I'm in the right place. But maybe you are pretty confident that traffic coming in here already knows that. So I might flip, I might put more emphasis on your true value prop, which is capture every incident, avoid false claims. I like that headline a little bit. I'd make that a lot bigger than the dash cam thing. So, because really what you're probably selling is avoiding false claims, saving money by avoiding false claims. The technology, the product is just the means to get there, right? That's probably truly what you're selling. So that's one of my initial quick thoughts.
Yeah, from just the quick glance that I'm seeing here too, I like the fact that it has that GIF playing immediately showing kind of what the platform looks like and what a user could see. I'm a big fan of at first glimpse when you land above the fold showing users exactly kind of what the platform looks like and how easy it might be to use. I think easy is a good theme actually, and cleanliness in the platform is something that can go a long way for users to say, that's something I could imagine myself actually using. I think, with your two main call to action, check our prices and watch video. Curious if you click watch video, Matt, if you have the window open there, because being that that's going to be front and center, if there'd be a way potentially, depending on what triggers from there, if that's going to be a YouTube video, I see the main button and we have the ability to actually close out of this below that. It'd be really cool to actually add either when somebody's done finishing the video or maybe even halfway through, display a call to action to then push them to the next step of the journey that would be the next logical step, whether that's to sign up for a trial or to input their information somehow, or even just at all times next to the close button, maybe utilize that same red kind of color just to make that stand out a little bit more so that the user's not forgetting that when they're watching the video, there's still an action for them to take after that, in addition to being educated and finding out more about that.
Love that. We have Rohan, a growth marketing manager from Samsara, who's joined us now. Hopefully getting some good value out of this.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Those were some great tips. Super useful.
Go ahead, Guy.
I'll add, I similarly like the simplicity of what's above the fold, and you succeeded in making above the fold simple, and you have a bunch below. I think that's actually great. A couple things that came to my mind, similar to what Ben said, my mind immediately went to the calls to action. They're clear and front and center. I would humbly suggest make them talk about the great future you're going to give them. Maybe it's about starting to gain control. Maybe it's about improving fleet safety. Like watch the video. What's the video about? Maybe you say it's about seeing it in action. The CTAs are functional, but they don't speak about the benefits to the video. The check our prices is really a flow to talk to sales. Maybe it's about, get started quickly or see it in action, right? At the end of that flow, you get to a seller. So that was one line of reasoning. Another one is you have social proof further down on the page. To Ben's point, depending on the mindset they're in, you may actually want that right up here. Right? You may want to say, hey, join X thousand other companies. Or you may want to add Trustpilot rating or some other rating, that they have, that you have. And the last thought was, Sam said, hey, open up the video. I must admit, it's a tiny mechanical note. I totally agree with Sam that put the calls to action visible partway through. When you open it, I couldn't figure out how to close it because the close button in my monitor was sitting on top of the animated video on the base page. And I was like, well, I'm not trying to click on another YouTube recommended video. Tiny little tactic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I hope these are helpful. The base page looks, it's a lot of people aspire to get to a page this simple.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would, with these high-tech products, I find it really useful to lead with placing questions in the visitor's head. Because right now, when you come and land on the site, you've got a high-tech product that you could probably talk a lot about the features that the video does. But what you're wanting to do is implant questions inside the visitor's head that your technology, your product provides answers to. Don't lead with your answers if the visitor doesn't have the question in their head, right? The answers will be useless. So to me, that capture every incident, avoid false claims. I would drill in on that, avoid false claims. Do you have any social proof around how much that can save a company in avoiding false claims? Put the question in my head as a visitor of how much can I save in avoiding false claims? I don't even know that. Provide match to Guy's point, that social proof of placing that question in your visitor's head.
further, talk about rogue drivers, talk about distracted drivers like your video does. Like, talk about the problem front and center to create, Ben, because I heard your questions going towards, let me poke at the problem. And then towards the end of the flow, you can start, talking more about the bright future you're going to give them and how you're going to solve all of these.
I like to phrase it of what are the questions that your product provides answers to, and then really drill in. You don't have to like put the question on the site, but you can speak to that question. You can do some inception to place that question in your user's head.
Yeah, those are some great points. I think talking through like the initial header that we had upfront, which has real-time fleet dash cams. The reason we made that really big was our thinking was that if someone lands here from one of our ads, just making sure they've reached the right place. So just tell them like what the product is, to just drill that in. But I guess it might be too big and front and center.
Rohan, another thing you could do is show that to the time because you want them to know they're in the right place and that they know what Samsara does. You might then not show it to them on a repeat visit.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome.
Man, hope this has been useful. Thanks so much for letting us put you on the hot seat, put your set in the hot seat, but hopefully get some good ideas out of this as well. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, gentlemen, we got one more here. Seattle ballooning. I am in the Seattle area, so this is a little near and dear to my heart. Let's pull this up and see what we got. And I'm going to go and find Yalif, who has been very active in the chat. Thank you for doing that and bring you up on stage here.
Yeah, I mean, just, seeing this, pop up here on the screen, one thing that jumps to mind, especially with the kind of user you might be attracting coming to this page, would be finding a way to actually build confidence or trust the second that somebody lands on here. I like the space. I love the imagery behind it. I think that that's really compelling and very engaging. The two call to actions, the way the colors align from the bar above the navigation with those little promo buttons up there, it's all uniform. And if there was any additional thing to put in there, building confidence, I think, would be a way to just kind of immediately institute with the user the second they drop on is that they be safe, that this is a place they can trust, and that this is something that they can engage with. And I think, whether that's throwing out a number like, the number of successful flights that have been, or the amount of, customers that have gone through there, or even just a quote from somebody that, really loved the experience. It can be small but minimal, but I think that could actually go a very long way to instilling that confidence immediately actually upon landing there.
Yeah, I've got a lot of sort of a grab bag of minor things that I want to rush through, and then I would speak to a couple big things that would back up what Sam said. I think the minor things is, I would make the CTAs a bit bigger, stand out a little bit. I would actually make them a different color than the top bar. The plan your flight, where that leads, Matt, if you want to click on that, there's a little bit of it's a little bit misleading because it doesn't actually allow you to plan your flight. It just allows you to read kind of a bunch of FAQ type of material, not literally, but and then it asks you to book, right? So it's that CTA, there's a misalignment of what the user will expect when they click on that to what they actually get. So I might change some of the wording around there. That's some of the minor stuff. Backing up a little bit bigger around trust and security. Your whole product, you want to double down on that. Testimonials, user-generated content around that. And then you've got nothing addressing the current state of affairs. Like I've got a small family. I'm actually on vacation right now in Colorado, and I'm looking at things to do because we can't go to restaurants. There's no festivals, but like maybe river rafting. Oh, hot air ballooning. This is awesome, right? Is it safe right now? Where's the recency of consideration of the recent events? I looked all around and didn't really find it.
So the main place we have it is, so the chatbot, you were on a second visit because you'd already been to it. So it brought up the chatbot for a second time visitor versus the first time. So we have 33% of people click into the chatbot. And so if you were to go back to, Drift's having a little error this morning. But if you were to reload it into like an incognito tab and scroll down 20%, it would fire. And inside of the actual chat bot, that's where then it actually says, learn more about with coronavirus and planning your flight and that kind of stuff. So do you think that it's valuable to put it directly? I mean, I could put a button that says, learn more about planning your flight with coronavirus.
I would, you know, the quick and dirty of it, add something to your FAQ, the top of your FAQ. That's really easy. I like doing it through Drift. I'll let you know that when I went there this morning, you hit me up with a 10% off coupon. I did not see anything about COVID or anything.
Yeah, once you click into it, then you get, it says ask a question, or do you just want the code? And then it goes, great, planning your flight. What do you want? And goes into it there. I've played around with the different personalization of testing. I found that if I just say, hey, want to see an epic video, it's about a 28% versus talking about COVID. It actually had a 13% engagement rate. So it dropped down initially talking about it versus people are already interested and excited, and then they have questions a little bit deeper in what's going through. But I could see that on the site to fire a bot to more talk about that and then re-engage them. That makes total sense. Yeah.
I would challenge the video as the header. I've actually never seen it work in a test.
Oh, really?
So it's very aspirational. You know, you love it when you're there to, I don't know, usually static images will allow the page to perform its singular goal, which is not aspirational. It's more potentially transactional.
Okay.
But I very much would be challenged on that. You know, Sam said he loved it. He was very inspired by it.
So I'll take that challenge, Ben. I must admit, when I went to this site early this morning, I also got the 10%, but I really liked the aspirational video. I liked that the tagline around your next adventure begins here. That too was aspirational. And my hypothesis was similar to yours, Ben, that like, hey, I've got a range of activities I could do. Maybe ballooning wasn't the first one I thought of. And so I was hypothesizing, you know, Eliav, you have the data, but that there's lower intent, that it isn't yet transactional, that you do need to motivate more. And if that's true, I thought this was great. You're clearly testing a bunch. It's awesome that you have a different chatbot on the second view. The thing that came to my mind was it was beautifully aspirational. The video and even the nav starts with the product. It starts with you. And I wonder, could you shift it a little bit? I thought the Next Adventure did just that, talking about the customer, talking about how it's going to make them feel, talking about their experience, maybe even working in more shots of them, of happy people on it, of a family enjoying it, or reviews or headshots about how this experience was for them, so that, you know, they're more front and center after maybe a shot or two of that beautiful balloons going around, because you're like, wow, this is amazing, but then focus it on them. As a thought, you may have already tried it.
Yep. No, that's, you know, it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, bringing in more testimonials and video testimonials and capturing them in the air. One of the challenges right now is everyone's wearing face masks, so it's a little different than like it was before, which is, you know, just part of the challenge of the times. But for sure, I think that trust is that experience is going to be great even with COVID right now, and maybe that's the piece where you add into people still, you know, being excited with their masks in front of a 14,000 volcano, you know, and having great experience. Because we've all 5-star reviews, so it's just how do I bring those back into the site in a more
and you might want to focus on a product, your private flight product as opposed to the group flight product. Like if you put that front and center, easier, do some the product discovery is ultimately, you know, bring that up the funnel maybe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because we've had more and more do private groups, but then there's also people surprising, like, I just want to join a flight.
And even, I mean, kind of piggybacking off that idea too, you know, the idea of maybe testing how the video performs against, you know, a photo of some sort. You know, maybe if you have something in your library, I'm not sure what photos you have available, but sometimes being able to kind of psychologically get the user to imagine themselves stepping into what you're trying to sell them or trying to get them on board for is a really good way to kind of pique their interest. And so if you had any imagery that kind of shows pre-takeoff, like maybe the group walking up to the balloon just about to get on, being warmly welcomed by somebody, if it was a nice panoramic shot of that, I would actually argue if you were to test against any other photo, that might be a really compelling.
And you were saying for the hero of showing the people getting into the basket with the balloon already up or as it's inflating, of something like that, of the hero, or later on in other parts and just have a hero of the balloon in front of Mount Rainier?
I mean, I would argue maybe even doing it in the hero if you wanted to see the efficiency of a video versus a photo, something that maybe shows people like a group, if you want to push that up, a group walking up to getting into the balloon, and in the background you see the balloons already up in the air. So it kind of piques the interest of the user to almost imagine what it'd be like walking up to getting started in that.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. Yep. If you want to piggyback on that, if you wanted to also challenge my hypothesis that your video background is distracting, as Sam alluded to, make it static with like a video front and center above the fold, allowing, putting the power of choice to the customer. If they want to be inspired, click the video. If you want to be transactional, go in, be transactional.
Yeah. And that's what we used to do with the chatbot. It said, want to see an epic video of us flying in front of a volcano, right? And that was a 31% engagement rate with the chatbot. I found it was the same thing with the 10% or with that, whatever it is. So I've been playing around, testing a lot of the CTAs for fun, but yeah, no, that's super. I could see that being helpful and maybe trying that again of a static image. But I wasn't sure if it was just the times like you were talking about of why my conversion rate was a little lower than last year at the same time with doubling my traffic, or if it's maybe something like that from the change room.
Cool, guys. Well, I think we gotta jump here in a couple of minutes. Elliot, hopefully this is useful. Lots of good. Well, thank you so much for submitting this. All right, guys, we've got just a couple minutes left before we wrap up. I wanted to make sure we more directly address the web personalization versus chatbot question that came in as well. And I don't know, anybody can chime in on this, but I'm curious how you think about this. I mean, clearly we've got Elliot doing elements of that on Seattle Ballooning as well. And I know a lot of companies are incorporating Drift and other chatbots in.
For a lot of the discussions we've had, including with Drift, it's been an and, not an or. Mm-hmm. It's been, hey, I'm going to go take people through a journey. And some people do want to engage more and do want to have the chat experience, and some want the more static. Drift themselves publicly shared that they viewed the ones that went through chat as higher intent, higher value. They found them converting better. And so they did try to funnel people into the chat. They also used machine learning to say, which bot do I want to show? So that they could show, is it the more aggressive one? Is it the more one focused on innovation? Is it the more transactional one? Something we talked to them about, but we didn't end up implementing with them, is to actually have it affect the other way around. So you could have somebody's behavior on the page affect which bot shows up. You could have the bot affect what's on the page, right? When somebody says, oh, I want to show you X in the bot, you could then have that dynamically change what's on the page based on what happened in the bot. We thought that would be a neat experience, very congruent and engaging and relevant. We haven't built that yet, but it's technically possible. So I'm not punting the question because I think it's an and, not an or. Mm-hmm. Typically, we find it's different resources building the bots than building the website. And the bot is typically viewed as a heavier lift than doing one element, an individual variation on the website. And so that has moderated how much of each we've seen people do.
Yeah, and I would say that it's a two-parter, and from my view, it's that the diversity of playbooks that you use for the bots can impact the success you experience with using the chat bots altogether. Just using a couple of playbooks across the entire site, you're probably not going to be optimizing it as optimally as you could, as opposed to if you found out what your biggest levers were across the website, where people are engaging the most, your homepage, a pricing page. And find ways to kind of supplement that with the chatbot to kind of pique users' interest if they have any questions. And then I'd say the second part is don't be afraid to actually A/B test the efficacy of a chatbot versus, say, like a promo pop-up of some sort on the page. You might find that certain segments of your users might actually just like an image of a pop-up coming up, allowing them to, engage with a promo versus other users might actually like the chatbot appearing too.
Awesome.
Yeah, you got to go. Yeah.
No, you got 40 seconds, and then we got to let people go on time here.
To piggyback, Sam, on what you said, we're testing right now a 50-50 turning Drift on and seeing how that's cannibalizing MQL leads and looking at the down funnel implications of that. Definitely want to do that. You could also trigger it based on, are you from the construction industry, healthcare industry? Do you know that? Then pop up your then talk, the MQL is dead according to Drift, right? So don't talk to everybody, only talk to the people that you really care about. Maybe that's another way to, like, on your point, guys, it's not an or question, it's an question.
Awesome. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here. I want to respect everyone's time. This has been a ton of stuff. We packed a lot into an hour. Unfortunately, we didn't get to. We were thinking we might be able to get to a third website that we could evaluate on the fly. Didn't get to that. Might be an opportunity for an encore performance of this panel to be able to do this again. I saw this. I saw a little yes from Ben and a thumbs up from Guy. So might be able to do that. But anyway, we have been recording this session. If you want to watch it again, if you were furiously taking notes and might have missed something or want to share this with some of your colleagues, I want to thank our guests, Sam and Ben. Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you, Intellimize, for prioritizing this. And thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks for hosting, Matt. Hope everybody found it valuable.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.